Hey, Harry, Cedric greeted cordially as Harry handed over a vial of mandrake potion to revive Cho Chang, who wasn't technically dating Cedric yet but everyone could tell it was only a matter of time. How Harry missed that the first time he'd never know. It wasn't like they were even trying to be subtle or anything. I never did thank you for ordering us those brooms, did I? I honestly can't remember, Harry confessed. I was literally mobbed after that came out. Well, he paused, trying to think back. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were the most serious offenders, which is strange because usually Gryffindors are the most exuberant. I think my own house may have been slightly annoyed that I destroyed the advantage my new brooms gave us when I gave you guys them too. As for Slytherin, well, they became convinced that I hated them because I didn't bother getting them brooms. Never mind that Draco already bought them the same kind. Cedric eyed Harry carefully. You don't seem the type to buy into house prejudices like that, and I think anything you say to the contrary is just in the spirit of friendly house rivalry. I also refuse to believe you could be so careless as to remember to get two teams brooms so as not to inconvenience your rival seekers but completely forget about a third house that has a friend of yours a seeker. Let me tell you, no one understands how you two are friends. It is the most bizarre friendship rivalry we've seen in a while. What do you mean? Harry feigned innocence. You have opposing views on virtually everything. You're both very visible members of the two houses that buy into house rivalry the moment you refuse to let a certain rumor about his parentage die. You hate each other's friends, and act like rivals half the time, Cedric quickly rattled off. All in good fun, Harry assured him. And if you don't think it was an accident that I didn't get Slytherin brooms, what do you think? You knew what Malfoy would do and that's why you bought the other three teams brooms, Cedric speculated. What, do you think I'm spying on him or something? Harry asked, pretending to be offended. Cedric didn't seem to bite though and simply shrugged. How would I know? Maybe your scar told you. Harry didn't get a chance to answer because at that moment the mandrake potion took effect and Cho's eyes fluttered open. Cedric, she asked confused. What happened? Harry left her future boyfriend to explain and headed off to go visit Hagrid. He was right about possessed. Pettigrew having different victims and was glad that everyone appeared to be taking his advice about using a mirror. Still, constantly being summoned to the hospital wing to administer the potion, which he refused to give up for fear that Wormtail would break into the hospital wing and destroy Harry's supply, was really starting to get annoying. He wished possessed. Pettigrew would just hurry up and make his move. Well, that was a huge waste of time, Harry muttered. Sirius had sent him a letter via Hedwig asking why he didn't try to kill the basilisk now as he knew how to kill one safely and was also privy to the location of the Chamber of Secrets. He'd woken up early the morning of the match against Slytherin and snuck out to Myrtle's bathroom. Myrtle had been surprised to see him but pacified once he transfigured a bar of soap into chocolate and she could pretend she could taste it. Once Harry got to the chamber, he encountered very little problems. It took him a minute to get back into the swing of pretending the stone carvings were actual snakes and speaking Parseltongue again, for he had been unable to utilize that particular talent of his once he was no longer a Horcrux, but he quickly made his way towards the main room. After arriving, he had encountered a little roadblock, namely, he could not make the stupid Slytherin statue open up. It had taken him a little while, but he had eventually remembered that Riddle had said speak to me Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four and the basilisk had appeared. Unfortunately, when Harry tried that and a myriad of other passwords, the statue remained impassive. Harry had no idea what he was doing wrong. Had Riddle done something else to prepare the chamber in the time after his arrival and before Harry had shown up? Harry didn't think so, but who knew? Another, more likely, possibility in Harry's opinion was that Slytherin had trained or enchanted the basilisk to only respond to the air of Slytherin. Harry, for all his many talents and the piece of Voldemort's soul that currently resided in him, was not a descendant. Then again, Voldemort's Horcrux was the one currently opening up the chamber. Was it because Riddle's soul was whole before the diary Horcrux and so he had more soul to put into the diary? Or because the diary was essentially the same as the 16-year-old Riddle and Harry was a completely different person with a piece of Riddle trapped inside of him? Who really knew how ancient magic like that worked anyway? When Harry arrived back in Myrtle's bathroom, after shrinking and pocketing all of the shed basilisk skin in sight, basilisks were so rare that it had to be worth something, right? He found Luna eating Myrtle's chocolate and describing the taste in great detail for her. What are you doing here? Harry asked, nonplussed. Did you know that there is a Quidditch match today? The whole school has been in an uproar since they discovered you were missing, Luna responded, examining the entrance to the chamber with great interest. So you came to look for me? Harry asked. At Luna's nod, he continued. Why here? Where else would you be? Luna replied primly. Is this the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets? Crap, Luna wasn't supposed to find out about that. Actually, no one was supposed to find out about that. Still, if anyone did, he supposed Luna was really the best person to do so. It would be simpler if he just obliviated her, but Harry refused to do that as a matter of principle. Stupid morals and suspicions that he himself had been obliviated a few times in his time. Yes, Harry said finally, hesitantly. I see, Luna nodded sagely. And I can't tell anyone or else whoever is attacking the students will know that you know. Exactly, Harry said, relieved that she understood. I can't get to the basilisk because I can't find a way to access it. I think it's because I'm not related to Slytherin but I'm not sure. If people found out about the entrance, they could try to guard it but sooner or later, Pet the Dire-possessed parent betrayer would find a way around it. And in the meantime, the panic would be incredible and would lose a chance to destroy the basilisk once and for all and keep future generations safe. That's very risky, Luna told him solemnly. But I trust you. Am I right in thinking that, because of the Slytherin connection, only a Parselmouth would be able to open it? Are you a Parselmouth? I always did underestimate you, Luna, Harry said with a wry smile. Now what time is it? When does the match start? About 20 minutes ago, Luna said casually. What? Harry screeched. Why didn't you tell me? If you were that concerned about arriving to the match on time, you really should have brought a watch, Luna chastised him. Harry practically flew up to his dorm room to grab his broom and then literally flew out the window and towards the pitch. And Slytherin has just scored again, bringing it up to 60-20 Slytherin, Lee Jordan was saying as Harry approached. The Gryffindor team is clearly feeling pessimistic about their chances without a seeker. Where is Harry? At first no one realized that Lee had spotted Harry, but he quickly continued. I don't believe it, 30 minutes into the match, Gryffindor seeker Harry Potter finally deigns to show up. I'm not sure where in the world he was, as even the Weasley twins failed to locate him, but hopefully now he'll be able to turn this thing around. Jordan, McGonagall admonished. Do try and pretend to be impartial. But Professor, I didn't even insult those dirty, rotten Lee began, smirking. Not insulting is not the same as being impartial, McGonagall pointed out. Honestly, it's time like these that I wonder why I don't have a commentator from every house so that I can always be sure to have someone on hand without a personal interest in the match. You know you'd miss me, Lee teased before clearing his throat. I've been instructed to inform you that Harry is not riding the same Nimbus 2001 brooms that the other 27 Quidditch players are using. He says that this is because he is not only more than good enough to outfly the other 3 seekers blindfolded on his current broom, but that he is refusing to use something his friend, rival. Who even knows what they are? Anyway, he is refusing to use the same broom as Draco Malfoy. And he would also like to state publicly that he believes the popular theory that Malfoy is Professor Snape's love child is a vicious lie, and you all should forget about it. Harry! Draco shouted as Harry flew past him. You said you'd quit it. I did, Harry said innocently. I was just going above and beyond and trying to do some damage control by stating that I believe it to be false. You only believe it's false? Draco demanded. You're the one who started it. I'm sure I don't know nearly enough about your parents' relationship with each and with Snape to be able to tell one way or another with any degree of certainty, Harry said delicately. There was movement in the corner of his eye. Duck, will you? Draco looked confused, but automatically did as Harry asked. Harry raised his wand at the bludger he had already noticed following him and was fairly certain had been cursed by Dobby and cast a quiet, reducto. As the bludger exploded, Harry spotted the snitch and dove after it. Draco, reeling from the explosion, did not see Harry's move until he was halfway to the snitch, and even though he shot after him, he was too late to stop Harry's hand from closing over the snitch. How could you be so reckless, Mr. Potter? McGonagall demanded after the match. I know that you have little regard for the rules, but this is ridiculous. You could have seriously injured yourself and Mr. Malfoy, and you destroyed Hogwarts property. As much as this pains me to do so, I have no choice but to assign you detention every Saturday night for a month and to take 50 points from Gryffindor. Harry had honestly never considered that he could have hurt Draco once the bludger exploded, but was thankful nonetheless that he was all right. As for his punishment, well, who am I to be serving detention with? Professor Lockhart has already asked for you personally, McGonagall told him, her voice laced with slight distaste. She never had thought very highly of the old fraud. Excellent, Harry grinned. 50 points was about the same amount he and Hermione managed to earn on an average day, to his eternal shame and Hermione's delight, and as for the detentions. He promised me he'd teach me all about how to answer fan mail and tell normal letters apart from the nasty kind that either hex you or have something wretched inside of it without opening it, Harry beamed. McGonagall looked annoyed, but since teachers could technically assign whatever they wanted for detentions as long as it was legal, she could do nothing. That night, as the obligatory Gryffindor is better than all the other houses for whatever we've managed to do now party was winding down, Hermione and Ron cornered him and cast a privacy charm to the area they were standing in. Neville hadn't bothered to come over and was instead chatting amiably with Ginny, so Ron had to go and physically drag him over. Not before Ginny kicked him and accused him of trying to monopolize all their friends, though. When did Neville and Ginny become friends? Harry really would have to look into that. Perhaps it was when he was off doing whatever he happened to feel like and Ron and Hermione were investigating Draco. After all, Neville had stayed with the Weasleys for a month over the summer, and with Ginny nice and non-possessed, there was nothing stopping them from hanging out when Neville's other friends ditched him. How did he do it? Hermione demanded once Ron stopped complaining about demon sisters. How did who do what? Harry asked, honestly having no idea what she was talking about. Hermione sighed in exasperation. How did Malfoy fix that bludger? You think Malfoy fixed the bludger? Harry asked carefully. I'm the one who blew it up. That was some explosion, too, Ron grinned. And did you see the look on Malfoy's face? Priceless. That bludger was following you around, Hermione explained. It must have been hexed, and who else could have benefited from it besides Malfoy? How could you tell it was following Harry around? Neville asked reasonably. The game only lasted 5 minutes once Harry decided to show up. Where were you anyway? Bathroom, Harry deadpanned. For 4 hours? Neville asked skeptically. When you gotta go? Harry began slyly. You. Hermione interrupted. Honestly. And I'm positive that Bludger was following Harry around. Still, Madam Hooch checked the balls before the game starts and nothing was wrong then. Wait, she checked the balls for signs of tampering with her wand? Harry asked. Hermione looked at him strangely. Yes. How else would she do it? Damn. There goes my squib theory. Harry muttered. Hermione didn't understand. What dash? Never mind, Harry cut her off. He didn't think he had ever mentioned his theory from the year before about Madam Hooch being a squib when she failed to use magic to do basic things like break Neville's fall during their first flying lesson. Do you honestly think that Draco is skilled enough at magic he could bewitch a Bludger? All Quidditch balls have several layers of enchantment to protect them from tampering and make them damn near impervious to magic. Draco's only a second year. I'm widely viewed as a freaking prodigy, God knows why, and I don't think I could have tampered with that Bludger. Then what do you suggest happened? Hermione demanded, folding her arms across her chest. House Elf with a grudge. Harry suggested. I thought House Elves loved you. I mean, they did adopt you, Ron pointed out. Hermione glared at him. You are so not helping. Ron shrugged. I read it in the Quibbler. Hermione looked like she dearly wished to strangle him. What? Ron asked defensively. I got a free subscription after I won their unusual creature crossword puzzle. It was really cool. They could tell who finished it first because once it was completed you tapped your wand to it and said submit, and if you were right, your paper asked for your name, and when you wrote it down, it transmitted the information to the Quibbler. But it's all a bunch of rubbish. Hermione insisted. If you two are going to start arguing again, can I go back to the party? Neville asked. They ignored him, so Neville turned to Harry. You might as well, Harry told him. They might be a while. Are you coming? Neville asked. Or are you going to make things worse by adding your own commentary and reminding them of more incidents to be upset about again? Tempting as that is, no, Harry shook his head. I'm heading to bed. Already? Neville was understandably surprised. Harry rarely was in bed before midnight and it was only 10:30. I have a house elf with a grudge to meet with, remember? I thought you were kidding, Neville said mildly. I wasn't, Harry assured him. Well, at least about the house elf part. He actually has a bit of an obsession with me, but he took a knife for me once, so I'm not going to yell at him about it. Whatever, Neville said, heading towards the food table and waving at Ginny. When Harry reached the empty dorm room, he saw Dobby waiting for him on his bed. Hello Dobby, he said pleasantly in his best Dumbledore impression. He had spent hours perfecting it in front of a mirror, but try as he might, could never manage that twinkling eye thing that was such an essential part of the act. Perhaps it was just a side effect of using legimancy. Dobby looked very nervous and near tears. Harry Potter came back to school. I told you I would, Harry said. And I'm not leaving no matter what you try. Stealing Ron's dad's car to drive to the Hogwarts Express was kind of fun, and the fixed Bludger was really only a mild inconvenience, but even if you truly do something that might make me want to leave, I won't do it. You know why? Dobby shook his head. Because I'm stubborn as hell and will probably just view that as a challenge, Harry replied matter-of-factly. Harry Potter does not understand, protested Dobby desperately. Dobby has heard about the great Harry Potter and what he has done already. He is being good to all creatures and the house elves love him. Harry Potter must not stay at Hogwarts and be killed. He must leave and continue to do good. Harry thought that Dobby's account was rather too generous, but that was Dobby all right. Look, Harry said gently. I know about the diary. I know about the basilisk. I know who has the diary right now, and I know that he is going to want to get me involved. I also know how to kill both the diary and the snake, and I'm fairly certain I know how to stop the man. I appreciate your concern, but I can take care of myself. Dobby has no doubt that Harry Potter can, but Dobby does not like to take chances and does not want to lose such a great and powerful wizard. Dobby had no idea the great Harry Potter was so clever. Dobby gushed, tears springing to his eyes again. Yeah, Harry said dismissively. He heard footsteps, someone was coming. Just as he was about to tell Dobby to go, a thought occurred to him. Wait, didn't Draco order you not to try to save my life or to try and drive me from the castle? To Harry's surprise, Dobby looked downright mischievous. Dobby wasn't trying to save the great Harry Potter's life, nor was he trying to send him away from Hogwarts. Dobby was trying to break Harry Potter's arm. And with that, Dobby was gone. Harry had definitely underestimated him. Chapter 18. Harry awoke the next morning to the sensation of 3 stinging hexes cast in quick succession. Ow, he complained as he reached for his wand and disarmed his unknown assailant. What was that for? Sorry Harry, Percy said apologetically. But I've heard that trying to up conventionally just gets you hexed for your trouble. So you thought you'd get in a preemptive strike? Harry asked, annoyed, as he tossed Percy his wand back. What's so important that you're waking me up at this ungodly hour? It's 8:30, Percy informed him, rather pompously. Harry rather marvelled at the prefect's ability to sound pompous even when doing such mundane things as giving the time. Draco had that same tendency sometimes. It must be a pure blood thing. No one should be up before 9 on a day they don't have class unless it is a matter of life or death, Harry said seriously. And I'm sure Ron and Neville have explained what happens when people do wake me up. And considering that those are two of my best friends, imagine how badly I'd hex anybody else. Percy gulped. Indeed. Well, as it turns out, this is an emergency. My sister was petrified last night. Ginny? Harry repeated disbelievingly. Talk about ironic. She was about the last person Harry would have ever expected to get petrified, aside from himself, of course. Clearly Riddle was getting fed up with the lack of results his basilisk was getting due to Harry's ready supply of Mandrake potion and had decided it was open season instead of bothering with verifying someone's blood status. Not like Pettigrew would even have a way of finding that out, unlike Ginny. What was she even doing out? There's no way a basilisk could fit in the Gryffindor common room, and chances are if it did, someone else would have noticed it. Yes, well, Percy continued, looking a bit awkward. She wasn't in the common room, and neither was the boy they found her with. Harry choked. Boy? She's bloody 11. Percy peered curiously at him. Most people your age wouldn't reach that conclusion quite so quickly, if at all. Harry shrugged. Since when have I ever been most people? So who was with her? And are they both all right? Neville Longbottom, Percy replied promptly. I believe he is a friend of yours. Do you have any idea what Ginny and Neville were doing out after curfew together? They weren't very far away from the fat lady and Peeves was found petrified nearby, so they probably saw the basilisk through him. Wow, Harry said, somewhat shakily. That was lucky. To think that they hadn't even thought to bring a mirror. If Peeves hadn't happened to be there, that never would have happened the last time. Perhaps it was because Harry's timely interventions meant that no one was petrified for long, that no one was taking the threat seriously this time. That could be a problem. He'd have to give Gryffindor a lecture about that later and hope they spread the word. Indeed, Percy nodded. If something had happened to Ginny. He shook his head, leaving the thought unfinished. Follow me. Killed my cat. Filch accused the moment the two stepped into the hospital wing. Harry blinked. Unless I'm very much mistaken, which is a very real possibility given my almost constant sense of déjà vu, didn't we already have this conversation? You did, Dumbledore said gravely. But alas, Mrs. Norris was attacked again last night. That's, what, for people? Harry asked. At Dumbledore's nod, he continued, that's quite a lot for one attack. Oh, here, he handed Madame Pomfrey 3 vials of Mandrake potion. Sorry I don't have one for Mrs. Norris, but I had only heard about Neville, Ginny, and Peeves. She doesn't need your bloody potion, she's dead. Filch roared. Oh, Harry said quietly, taken aback. He hadn't expected that. His friends and fellow students, though tending to get more careless as time went by, at least had the option of carrying around a mirror. Mrs. Norris not only hadn't had a chance in that regard, but apparently hadn't been standing behind Peeves at the time of the basilisk's appearance. He felt horrible for Filch. Granted, the man was unpleasant in the extreme and Harry had often fantasized about killing that accursed cat, but he would never have actually done it. She was all Filch had, really, and being the squib caretaker in a school full of wizarding children who hated him, Harry resolved to write to Mrs. Fig the minute this was over. He had an idea. I'm sorry, Harry said lamely. No you're not, Filch said bitterly. You hated her the way everyone always hated her. She wouldn't have given you any trouble if you'd just follow the rules. If those two, he jerked his head towards Ginny and Neville, had just stayed in their common room where they belonged, this never would have happened. It never should have happened. With that, Filch stormed out of the hospital wing. Harry stood there awkwardly until he heard Ginny start to cough. Are you okay? He asked, rushing to her side. Yeah, what happened? She asked slowly. You were attacked by the basilisk last night. It killed Mrs. Norris and petrified you, Neville, and Peeves, Harry explained. I never thought I'd say it, Neville spoke up, also awake now, but we really owe him one. Let's also never mention this to him lest he tries to enlist our help in some inane prank that will earn us detentions every day for a month. Or cost us hundreds of house points, Ginny agreed. On the other hand, Harry said quickly. You do owe him your lives. If you're that desperate to lose hundreds of house points, why don't you work with Peeves to pay him back for saving us? Neville shot back. Dumbledore looked outright shocked at the thought of anyone actively seeking to lose points. After mulling it over for a moment, he decided that Neville must be kidding and still coping with his recent traumatic experience. What were you and Miss Weasley doing outside of your common room after curfew, Mr. Longbottom? He asked. Well, Neville began, sounding a bit embarrassed. Ron was giving us a hard time because he wanted Neville to go over by him and Hermione but he didn't want me there, and when Neville said he'd rather keep talking to me, Ron blew up and started accusing me of trying to steal all of his friends, Ginny said bluntly. So we left. We didn't go far and we didn't think anything would happen. But it did, Miss Weasley, Dumbledore said gently. I know, she said softly. I'm sorry. I hope you learn from this that the curfew was put in place to protect you, especially now that there is a basilisk on the loose. Still, that's 20 points from Gryffindor, Dumbledore informed them gravely. Given the serious nature of the discussion, Harry held himself back from cheering. A couple weeks later, Harry himself had almost settled into the strange pattern of reflection checking, random petrifactions, and almost instant revivals. Almost, but not quite, because unlike everyone else he had the memory of what had happened the last time the basilisk was unleashed. Currently, he was standing in the Great Hall with Ron, Hermione, and Neville waiting for the first, and only, to Harry's recollection, meeting of the dueling club to begin. "I'm just saying, I don't see how nobody's heard about any of this," Hermione was saying. "I mean, for God's sake, the attack started a month and a half ago." "Who would write home about this?" Ron asked, looking at her as if she were mental. "Our parents would pull us out of school faster than you can say. Harry has an unlimited supply of Mandrake potion and we all check around every corner with mirrors, so we're really not in much danger." "Ron, you could do quite a bit by the time you say all of that," Neville said, amused. "Isn't the normal expression faster than you can say Quidditch?" "Yeah, but I figured my way is more appropriate to the situation," Ron replied. "I do not have an unlimited supply," Harry corrected him. "In fact, I really need to order some more. I'm just glad everyone does keep using mirrors or else things could start to get serious." "Could start?" Hermione repeated incredulously. "Harry, there's one of the most poisonous creatures known to man traveling freely around the school and attacking students. It's already serious. And I know that no one wants to worry their parents and we do seem to be suffering no permanent damage, except Mrs. Norris, of course, but why hasn't there been any mention of this in any alternative forums? The Daily Prophet at least." "I've been bribing them," Harry said simply. "You've been what?" Hermione shrieked. "Keep it down," Harry said irritably. "This isn't exactly public knowledge." "But Harry, you can't just dash," Hermione began helplessly. "Actually, I can, and let me just say that it really says something about a society if the only respectable newspaper is not only owned by the government but is willing to be bribed by a 12-year-old. And it's not like I'm doing this just for kicks, although I am perhaps enjoying making them write something that I approve of for once." "What justification could you possibly have?" Hermione demanded. "If certain factions hear word that Dumbledore can't keep us safe from the basilisk that is running wild through our school, they will remove him and appoint a ministry stooge as headmaster instead. That not only won't help, it will probably make the situation 10 times worse. I don't want this to get any more complicated than it already is, and turning this into a political game will do that," Harry told her. "Hey, is that Lockhart?" Ron asked. "With Snape? Are either of them qualified to teach dueling?" Hermione asked with pursed lips. "Maybe not Lockhart," Harry conceded. "But Snape knows a ton about dark arts and I gather he's a rather competent duelist." "Perhaps," Hermione allowed. "But I still think it should be Flitwick. He was a dueling champion when he was younger, you know." Harry watched as Lockhart and Snape's demonstration went almost exactly the way it had before, with Snape blasting Lockhart into a wall. Still, Harry had coached Lockhart a bit on what to do in case he was ever overpowered and didn't want to admit it, and so instead of protesting that he knew Snape was going to do it all along and sounding entirely unconvincing, Lockhart went the more practical route of smiling and thanking Snape for the fine example and warning the students not to put so much power into their spells. In fact, Lockhart almost made it wound like it was Snape's mistake that had him flying into the wall, not Lockhart's. Snape, predictably, looked murderous and his hand twitched for his wand, so Lockhart hastily split the observers into pairs. Snape walked by and paired Harry and Neville together, Hermione with Millicent Bulstrode, and Ron with Draco. "Wands at the ready!" Lockhart shouted. "When I count to dash." Lockhart didn't get any further as Ron and Draco had begun hexing each other the minute Snape's back was turned. Looking rather put out, Snape eventually separated them and called them up to the stage so they could try again without endangering everyone around them. Lockhart had actually tried to use Harry and Neville, but Snape had pointed out that Harry never took anything seriously unless it involved extreme emotional trauma on the part of one of his friends or if someone died, and Lockhart was forced to concede the point. Snape walked over to Draco and Lockhart went over by Ron. Harry was too far away to hear what they were saying, but from the smirk on Draco's face and the alarmed look on Ron's once Lockhart dropped his wand, he had a fairly good idea of what was going to happen next. The only question was what to do about it. 3, 2, 1, go. Lockhart shouted. Sap and Sorcia. Malfoy yelled the second Lockhart said go, not giving Ron any chance to react. Harry watched dispassionately as a large, black snake burst forth from Draco's wand. Was embarrassing Ron really worth the trouble that both Draco and Snape could get in for setting a potentially poisonous snake? Harry really wasn't sure if it was, but hoped that it wasn't, because he just couldn't believe that Snape would be so irresponsible, on a bunch on schoolchildren. Although to be fair, it was quite impressive that Draco managed to pull off a snake conjuring at the tender age of 12. Harry didn't think he learned how to do that until sometime either 5th or 6th year. Then again, he hadn't grown up knowing he was a wizard and playing with magic whenever his dead parents weren't looking either. Harry slowly made his way up to the stage as his peers stood transfixed by the large serpent. Don't move, Weasley, Snape said lazily, twirling his wand between his fingers. I'll get rid of it. He seemed to be in no hurry, though, so that snake had better be harmless. Harry thought he heard somewhere that the larger snakes were often non-toxic but could crush people, so setting that snake on Ron was still horribly unprofessional and, if the look on his friend's face was any indication, incredibly traumatizing. Ron was literally shaking. At least it wasn't spiders. Allow me, shouted Lockhart, unable to resist the opportunity to show off. He waved his wand with a flourish and there was a loud bang that sent the snake flying into the air. When it landed, it was understandably enraged and heading straight for Justin Finch Fletchley. Again. Was he just snake bait or something? Harry groaned. He had a plan for this, but he wasn't quite sure that it would work considering everyone was well aware that a giant snake was running around the castle. Look, the guy who attacked you didn't mean to, he's just one of the worst wizards I've ever met. I know you're mad and probably confused as hell and certainly didn't ask for this, but if you bite anyone, you'll only get yourself killed, Harry told the snake in Parseltongue. He climbed onto the stage and beckoned the snake towards him. Just calm down and come with me. If you just slowly come to me, they won't hurt you. I'm the only one who can understand you here and if you don't listen to me, who knows what they'll do? The snake looked at him for a long moment and then slowly began making its way in Harry's general direction. Draco, Harry noticed with almost malicious glee, visibly paled and gulped as the snake slithered past him. Served him right. For those of you who are undoubtedly concocting fantastic scenarios in your head about how I'm the heir of Slytherin after all because I can speak Parseltongue, I want you to look very closely at my hands. See how I'm gesturing for the snake to stay on the stage with me where you won't be in any danger. See how I'm totally not endangering anyone or egging the snake on. And yes, I'm talking to you Justin and Ernie. You guys jump to conclusions more rapidly than Ron and Hermione. Harry shook his head despairingly. Ernie bristled slightly at the implied insult. Clearly he had also noticed Ron and Hermione's proclivity for jumping to conclusions. Actually, it was more like skydiving to conclusions. Then what were you saying to it? Ernie challenged. Harry almost rolled his eyes. Did Ernie honestly think Harry would be telling the snake to do something nefarious and then confess it? Maybe he would have last time, but Harry had been spending far too much time with Slytherins recently to do something quite so inane. It's basically been variations of come over by me so people don't kill you, he said finally. Snape was the first to recover from the shockwaves Harry's announcement of sorts that he was a Parselmouth had sent through the room and quickly vanished the snake. Thank you, Professor, Harry said brightly. I'm glad you saw fit to clean up the mess you caused by telling Draco to cast that spell. 10 points from Gryffindor for your cheek, Potter, Snape snapped. Harry grinned. He had a vague suspicion that Snape knew how much he enjoyed losing points but helped him anyway in the vain hope that Dumbledore would actually let someone other than Harry win the House Cup. In case anyone's interested, now that my Parselmouth abilities is public knowledge, I'm here to announce that I'm willing to translate a conversation you want to have with a snake, any snake, I don't care, just bring it to me, for however long you want at 2 sickles for 5 minutes. Harry could swear that he heard Hermione groaning somewhere in the audience. I also want to reiterate again that I am not the heir of Slytherin and if I were then I definitely wouldn't be eating the cost of the Mandrake potions and start charging for them. But no, instead I am giving them out for free to anyone who needs them with no benefit for myself. Harry paused. Well, technically I'm using them as a tax deductible, but other than that, it's completely selfless. Remember, anytime you want to talk to a serpent, let me know. Now, if that's all, it's been a great dueling meeting, but now I'm off to bed. With that, Harry walked off the stage and out of the Great Hall, leaving a largely stunned audience behind him. Chapter 9